Happy Monday and welcome to a Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller, as we are getting set for yet again another huge week in the Missouri Valley Conference for both the Drake men and women. Last week, both Bulldogs go undefeated in the week, and then this week a huge game on Sunday where the Drake men will take on Bradley in the Knapp Center. Drake trying to complete a season sweep against the Braves, but they have more business to get to on the road against Illinois State on Wednesday. The women are on the road then following on Thursday. So not as many home games during the week, but a huge one on Sunday that I expect the Knapp Center to be packed for. But welcome to a brand new week on this podcast, whether you're listening or watching on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get it. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, all that good stuff on Media Row Pod. And I'm going to be, Travis Justice, who's one of my biggest mentors, always talks about being vulnerable. And I'm going to be that for just a little bit. And I'm not saying this for a pity party whatsoever, because at some point, you just have to move on. And so, getting laid off at iHeart, a shock, sucked. And I've been slowly trying to rebuild myself. And there's a lot of really good stuff that happened. A lot of people reached out to me, and it was great. And then I'm starting to do this Media Row Pod thing. And, it's still in the building phases. So there's times where I want it to go a little faster. It may not happen as fast, and that's okay. That's just life. And there were times, where I sit here and I broadcast this from my bedroom. Megan has allowed me to take over this wall to make it look nice. And so there's moments where I feel like I'm just talking to my computer screen, and that's it. And that sometimes can make me sit there and go, what am I doing? But then I have really cool moments that completely turn my mind around, of me being like, okay, I'm doing something that's of importance, and it's just in the building stages. Like, just gotta keep grinding. And I had another one of those really cool moments over the weekend. And I want to give a shout out to this Drake fan. Her name is Mary Ellen. And she came walking over and said, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing and love listening to you. And we had a great, 2-minute conversation, and she was so sweet. And it's little stuff like that right away makes me change it. Makes me get out of my little funk, makes me go, okay, yeah, let's keep grinding. Let's make this thing better. Let's get more people involved. Let's grow this community. Let's grow this fan base. Let's have a great time talking Drake basketball, talking sports, talking about whatever the hell we want, because in the summer, it's about to get weird on the Media Row podcast. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but we're going to be talking. And so, Mary Ellen, if you're listening, that meant everything over the weekend. And people have commented and reached out and have checked in on me. I mean, multiple people, will text me and be like, hey, still doing okay? And that means the world. And I'm not looking for, pity party or anything. It was months ago. At some point, you just got to move on. And that's where I'm at now. But there are times where you're grinding and you're applying for jobs, and maybe just the day isn't going right. And then Mary Ellen came to save the day, and I just appreciated that and wanted to give her a shout out. And all of you too, people that continue to join us, people that have been listeners from the start, everyone has been awesome. So really excited to continue to grow this thing, and everyone that has helped me, they know who they are. Really appreciate it. And let's get to talking. Enough about me. That's done with. Let's talk about this Drake men's basketball team, because they they go undefeated last week, stay in first place in the Missouri Valley Conference standing. They win their 10th straight in an overtime thriller against Indiana State at home, where they took down the Sycamores 85-81. They're now first in the Missouri Valley Conference, 2 games ahead of UNI and Bradley. And so it has just been a dominant, change of events for this Drake team since that loss to Murray State. They have adjusted well. We've talked about countless times about how Coach McCollum saw what went wrong and has completely addressed those issues. And so before we get into how Drake won, concerns are what we loved, what we're concerned about. Here is Coach Ben McCollum, his opening thoughts on Saturday night's overtime thriller against Indiana State.
I didn't think that we came out with an elite level of energy, defensively in particular, to impose our will. I thought offensively we executed though, so we're able to build a sizable lead, and just couldn't quite get us going defensively from an effort and even an execution standpoint, which is rare. I think the really good part about it though is sometimes you're able to learn from wins, as long as you don't let the win become a distraction, is what we told our guys, and I heard it from the Celtics coach. I gotta give him credit, but making sure that we learn from this and know that one, we did learn how to flip the switch. Like we weren't ready, and then with about 5-6 minutes to go, we flipped the switch and we turned it, which is hard to do. Anybody can be ready to go and play their best. When you're not ready to go, can you then flip it and eventually play your best? So I was proud of that. And the other part is some of those guys that weren't ready stepped up, and some guys that hadn't played as much stepped up, which is great. So we'll watch the film, we'll get better from it, and hopefully play much better versus Illinois State. And again, part of that too is, like, it goes without saying, Indiana State had a lot to do with it. Like, it wasn't just like we just played so bad, and they had a lot to do with it. I thought they played with a level of enthusiasm. I thought to start, I didn't think they came out with great energy either. And then I thought Teal just really breathed life into them and made the rest of them go. And he did an awesome job of that. And then they fought, and the rest of them followed. That was a really impressive performance by him.
So now, if you weren't there, how Drake won this overtime thriller, number one, it was some of the best ball movement we've seen from the Drake Bulldogs all season long. 20 assists off of 28 field goals made on the night, and they just moved very well without the ball. Players were cutting efficiently. They will always do the pick and rolls. That's just basketball. It's their style. But like we've talked about, there's multiple ways you see this Drake team utilize those picks. Early on in the season, sometimes it just felt like it was a way to just eat up some of that shot clock. And then Coach McCollum explained about, how it's just a way to create space and create lanes for Bennett Sturts and all that. And now, after that loss against Murray State, it feels like Ben McCollum has now made this where he has emphasized moving without the ball and letting your other players find you. Isaiah Howard does it really well. They started finding ways to get Mitch Muscari wide open so he can start knocking down threes and becoming a huge factor offensively, like we know he can be. Daniel Abreu, Cam Manyow on the pick and rolls was dominant, which was awesome to see because he struggled, was 1 of 5 at Murray State, and now against Indiana State, he was 3 of 3 to start the night and had the first 6 points, and they were off of pick and rolls, and he was just dominant on the glass and defensively. And so the ball movement was a huge key. Another big one was rebounding. We know how good this Drake team is. They're one of the best in the Valley, if not the best, in rebounding and holding opponents off the glass. They out-rebounded Indiana State on Saturday night. They out-rebounded them a total of 35-26. And then you have this Drake team that is just so dominant on the glass, and it translates to their record. They're 19-1 this season when they out-rebound teams. And they've just been really, really talented on the glass, something that Drake hasn't always been great at. But now you have Cam Manyow, Tavion Banks, Isaiah Jackson is one of the top leading rebounders on the team. But so rebounding and moving the ball, those were two things that just continue to get better as the year goes on. But then these last two were kind of the real reasons. Like, without these last two, that game could have gone bad real fast. And the ball movement translates to this next one I'm about to say, but it's the balanced offense. You had Sturts with 20 points, Abreu with 18, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. And then 13 points by Isaiah Jackson. And Isaiah Jackson, he doesn't score that often. And what I loved about watching him on Saturday night was you're seeing him grow in confidence. So he puts up 13. Second time this season, he's put up 10 plus. And he hit a 3 where he was wide open. And I think, most people watching that game, if you weren't watching Drake all year long, you see that and you just go, okay, nice shot. And then you move on. To someone like me, and I know other fans listening, that was a play a month, 2 months ago. Isaiah Jackson is driving into 4 people trying to make something happen. He's not taking that shot. That was just the style of play. Against Kansas State, he passed up multiple opportunities like that to drive into the paint, and it caused issues for Drake. And now you're seeing him get confidence back there now. Perfect timing. Get into late February, early March, you start getting him some confidence in the offensive side of things because he's a great defender, great rebounder. That could be dangerous. That could be really dangerous. So impressive by Isaiah Jackson, 13 points. And then in overtime, the hero was Tavion Banks. And Tavion Banks started the game off with was struggling. I mean, he finished the night 3 of 5, but I assume he was probably 0 of 3 to start the day. But then he goes into overtime. He's filling in for Cam Manyow, who is in foul trouble. And you never once saw him, and when he was struggling, when he was going through his rut, he never once had his head down. Never once was upset. Just kind of would listen to coach and then move on. And that was a huge telling sign. I leaned over to Alyssa at the Des Moines Register and said, watch Tavion on the bench. He's not complaining. I was like, how many times? And love Darnell Brody. What he did at Drake was awesome. But you would notice, if he had a struggling start, it was really hard for him to dig himself out of that hole. He would let other teams get in his head. He would let himself get in his head. Tavion Banks did not, and he goes into overtime and scores 7 of his 11 points in overtime. And that was huge. Drake, they outscored Indiana State 13-9 in overtime. And so that was huge for Tavion Banks and just the Drake team. And you just see how Coach McCollum has kind of put on this culture, has implemented a culture at Drake of, you may be having a rough night, but you can still find ways to help our team. It doesn't always have to be scoring. For Tavion Banks, it ended up being scoring. But look at what Isaiah Jackson has done all year. He's not a huge scorer, but he's a huge contributor on the offensive side or on the defensive side. Mitch Muscari may not put up 10 plus every game, but he takes a lot of eyeballs defensively. And Tavion Banks, even if he has a slow start, coming off the bench, filling in for Cam Manyow, who's in foul trouble, was huge. And, he could have easily sat there and dealt with his self-pity of starting 0 of 3. And instead, he ends with the night 3 of 5. So, just a huge performance by Tavion Banks. Gets it done at the free throw line, too. 5 of 7 at the free throw line. But so Tavion Banks was up there as kind of my MVP, but who really stole the show for me was Daniel Abreu. 18 points, yes, he got it done offensively. But I don't even want to talk about the 18 points because what he did that separated himself from the starting 5 and what I think was the biggest factor to Drake winning this game was his hustle. every loose ball, Daniel Abreu was there. Somehow. I mean, every time there was a ball that, didn't get rebounded automatically. Anytime it was, near the out of bounds line, that dude was hustling, trying to save it. And he had 8 rebounds. 5 of them were offensive rebounds. He was just unbelievable. Every loose ball, Daniel Abreu showed up. And that was a game changer, because how many second chance points Drake was able to get, how many second chance possessions Drake was able to get, 90% of them stemmed because of the hustle from Daniel Abreu. And I think, too, when you have a big man like that and someone who has that veteran leadership like Daniel Abreu has, that is going to be the stuff that really changes the mindset of a team. Maybe they gave up, they were up 41-29 at halftime, then they give up 43 points in the second half. If Daniel Abreu isn't hustling and busting his ass out on the court, you can have guys, and again, kudos to Ben McCollum, you could have guys sitting there in self-pity, and that's not what happened for Drake. So, huge night from Daniel Abreu, 18 points. Before we go too deep into it, though, here's Coach McCollum when I asked him at the press conference about just Daniel Abreu and what he does for this team.
The winner, sometimes, and I would share this with him eloquently. Sometimes it looks like a train wreck every once in a while. But that's my guy. He's a winner, and he's tough, and he's gonna fight, and he's a foxhole guy. That's who he is, and he's gonna find different things to do to be able to win that basketball game. And then I'm gonna yell at him for doing something that looks like a train wreck, and then he's gonna, okay, coach, and then he's gonna go fix it, because that's who he is. And I thought he was one that was ready to go. I thought he was ready to go, and I thought he fought, and I was really proud of him.
So Drake gets the win 85-81, and those were all the good things that Drake did. Really impressed with their defensive hustle, the balance on the offensive side of things. But it wasn't all pretty. Gave up 43 points in the second half, which is way above average. This Drake defense is usually on it. I do understand it's tough to hold a lead, but for this Drake team, it's really tough for them to, keep that pedal down to the floor. But 43 points in the second half, when it really, in the first half, it was all Samaj Teal. And that dude is unbelievable. 26 points he ends with, 9 of 13. And the other guys that scored, and Daughtry and Doherty, they weren't efficient, but they were able to make buckets when it counted. 4 Sycamores in double figures. 44 points in the paint was incredible by the Sycamores. I mean, Drake is usually good at, kind of clogging up that paint, but 44-38 was the differential in the paint. And then I asked Coach about this because I just wanted to get his response, because from what I heard from you Bulldog fans and kind of what my mindset was, that timeout by Ben McCollum wasn't the greatest timeout right before overtime. I mean, Bennett Sturtz gets it with 9 seconds to go or a little less, and it looks like he has a lane. Looks like he has an opportunity to end this in regulation, and Coach McCollum calls a timeout, and then they set up a play. Not a lot of ball movement, just Sturtz kind of trying to find some space, and he has to jack up a 3, misses it. And I asked Ben McCollum, I've asked him about his timeouts before, because sometimes, to the average fan like me, they come at weird times. And he was honest, and I won't spoil it because I have the clip here. But before we play the clip, just, he's talked about how it's a gut feeling thing, and maybe his gut kind of messed him up on this one. So here's Coach Ben McCollum on the timeout.
Run at it. I probably shouldn't have, looking back on it, because we're going to run the same thing. I mean, it's looking back on it, I shouldn't have, and I don't. Bad timeout. It was bad timeout. Bad timeout. Yeah. We don't, we get in huddles, and like we share like our vulnerabilities. Like that's the only way you can connect with somebody is to confront people and to share your vulnerabilities and my fault, whatever, and then go fix it. Like, but you can't just be my fault the whole time. You got to fix it. Yeah, 100%. No one's perfect. Yeah, no. If you walk around like you're perfect and you don't, make fun of each other, they make fun of me. Doesn't bother me. It's a good thing. That's healthy. The other way you're gonna make fun of me to somebody else, right? You might as well make fun of me to my face.
And that right there is why Drake is a number one team in the Valley. That right there is why Drake is winning and why they're so good and why maybe people that knew Ben McCollum well knew that it wouldn't be a tough stretch for him to, keep this Drake team winning. Because I've asked coaches before about kind of questionable calls from them. And I always try to do it respectfully because, again, I know the coach knows more than me. But I've had coaches who won't take responsibility, who won't even answer the question. But Coach McCollum, he answers the question, and he takes responsibility. And I asked him right after, I said, do you think you holding yourself accountable is a reason why Drake is having this unique success so quickly? And he said, absolutely. If you ask Jerome Tang, the Kansas State head coach, 9 times out of 10, I bet he doesn't answer that question with that kind of honesty. If you ask Fran McCaffrey that question, he probably isn't even going to answer the question. And would probably give you a look as if, like, how dare you question what I'm doing? And Coach McCollum just goes, hand up accountability. I messed up. And, hindsight 2020, probably shouldn't have called the timeout there. And I just respect that. I do. It is my new favorite moment with Coach. And I've had a lot these few weeks. Like, the more and more I interview Coach McCollum, the more and more it is like, how did anyone pass up on this coach? I know Drake passed up on him once, and it all worked out with Darren DeVries, and I love DeVries. But shocked Drake was able to get a second chance with Coach McCollum. He is built different, and I just respect all of his answers. The way he pushes to just market this team, it's amazing, and I love seeing it. As a diehard fan for so long, this is the kind of guy Drake has needed for a while. So Drake wins their 10th straight, continue to stay in first in the Missouri Valley Conference. Time to kind of get into those men Missouri Valley Conference standings. We always try to do that on Mondays. Tomorrow, we'll do it on the women's side of things. But starting off, you have Drake 12-2 in the conference, won 10 straight. That is now the second most wins, or second longest winning streak in the country right now. I think Akron right now has 12 games they've won, but Drake in second with 10. And then you have Bradley and UNI. They're both tied at second, 10-4. UNI with the tiebreaker over Bradley right now. Belmont in third at 9-4. And then you just have a 3-way tie with Illinois State, SIU, and UIC at 7-7. And this is just going to set up for an amazing March. I mean, the regular season, that isn't settled. I mean, Drake is still hopeful they win their regular season title for the first time since 2008. But really, more than that, it's just going to be anyone's tournament in St. Louis. I don't know who, like, Drake looks beatable. Bradley is beatable. UNI is very beatable. Yeah, every team. No one looks dominant. And I know tomorrow I'm going to get on my high horse about the NCAA and bubble watches and stuff like that. I wait till kind of Wednesday. I want to see where, Lenardi and all those guys have these They usually have them out by Monday, so we'll get to study them, get some of my numbers correct before I move on to my soapbox. But tomorrow may be a soapbox day on the Media Row pod. But Belmont at 9-4, a huge impressive win on the road against Bradley last week. Bradley and UNI dominated Bradley at home. And then Drake able to squeak out their third overtime win this season, and just been an impressive team all season long. So those are your Missouri Valley Conference standings in the men's side of things. Like I said, tomorrow, focus on what the women were able to do over the weekend, as well as dive into those Missouri Valley Conference standings as well, because that's another one. That tournament is going to be insane, and I wish I could have two Justins to go, one to the women to cover and one to the men. But unbelievable women's tournament getting set up as well. But with only a few minutes left before this episode is over, before we conclude our Monday, we have to talk about the Super Bowl, right? And comment. I want to hear your guys' feelings on it. So comment on our Twitter page, Instagram, all that stuff, YouTube here, all that. And while you're commenting, make sure to please subscribe. Appreciate that. But it was boring. That Super Bowl kind of sucked. And I now know how the fans that weren't crazy about the Seahawks or Broncos felt about Super Bowl 48, and how Seattle just ran Denver off the field. As a Seahawks fan, favorite Super Bowl of all time, but totally understand for a casual viewer that it's not fun. I mean, wasn't close from the start. And it was like 24-0. And we had a bunch of family and friends over, and Megan's like, "You think the Chiefs have a chance?" And I'm like, of course they have a chance. I mean, best coach, best quarterback, best tight end. Like, they're a really good team. They'll adjust. And they just never showed up. That offensive line gave up 6 sacks. And I said it on Friday. I usually go with defense. If a team has the best defense going up against a good offense, but that has been, not the same Chiefs offense we're used to seeing, I would take them in a heartbeat. But I thought Andy Reid and Mahomes would have something to counteract what Philly was doing, and they just never did. Mahomes was on his back so much. And Cooper DeJean, former Hawkeye, that was awesome to see him get his pick 6. Only 12 first downs for Mahomes, which feels low. And then, I don't hear anybody bitching about the refs, which is kind of nice. 7 penalties for 85 yards on the Chiefs. And yeah, where's the NFL script fans? Come on now. What happened? Did the Chiefs not pay the refs last night? Did their check bounce? What happened? Or maybe they're putting on their tinfoil hats and they're saying, no, this is part of it. The NFL knew we were on to them. So now the NFL had to make sure to tell the refs to call everything on the Chiefs so it makes sure it counteracts what happened earlier in the season. That's probably it. I don't buy any of it. Yeah, do the Chiefs sometimes get favorable calls? They do. Does Mahomes sometimes get favorable calls? They do. He does. But so did Brady. If you're like, so did Jordan. Has anyone not seen the clip where Jordan's walking to the ref? And this is like Wizards Jordan. This is Jordan on his last leg. And he's talking to the ref like, how's that not a jump ball? Blah, blah, blah. And the ref legit like grabs him. He's like, I'm sorry, Jordan. I'm sorry. Did you see that? You saw that? You saw that? So then they call it. They make the call favoring Jordan. Like, if you become the greatest in your sport, you get the calls. It just happens. And you earn it. And you know what? I still don't think all those, pass interference calls that get missed there's holding on every play. There's probably pass interference on every play. I'm not one of those people that buy into the refs favoring the Chiefs. I think they do get a few favorable calls, but not to the point that it's going to legit. They try to just let the Chiefs win. I don't think that's it at all. But yeah, other than that, boring Super Bowl. Halftime show was cool. I mean, I saw a lot of people bitching about it, but come on. Calling out Drake on national television is pretty sick. Like, that's a ballsy move, and I respect Kendrick for that. And I thought it was good. Serena Williams, crip walking, was sick. But it was fine. I like Kendrick Lamar. I thought it was better than like the Justin Timberlake halftime show. I think is worse. The Maroon 5 one was one of the worst. But commercials were bad as usual. They just haven't been good. Like, I don't think there was one. Like, I can't remember one commercial that I thought was pretty good. Outside of the Rush at the very last second. There you go, guys. I'll plug you. But, yeah, not a great night for the Super Bowl. But kudos to Philadelphia fans. Congrats on taking down the Chiefs. Still, 3 in a row. Has yet to happen. I'm one of those people that was hoping for history, too. If you saw, too, none of my parlays worked. And they're my non-analytical parlays. I just try to go with what will give me money, and that's probably why I lost. But boring Super Bowl. Comment what you thought of the Super Bowl on our social media pages. Up next tomorrow, we'll make sure to preview the Missouri Valley Conference standings for the women, as well as talk about their success. And then also going to get on my soapbox tomorrow, so be sure to follow along for that. Keep on following us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock on the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller.